Welcome back. So we have a project here that's already in progress, and it's been in progress for more than a year and a half. I started trying to repair this Yaesu microphone, model number MH-27, before I moved from one house to the other. Didn't get finished because it did not go well, and boxed it up and shipped it off, and there's some things missing that I'll have to work out or find, but that's another story. Anyway, this particular microphone is rather notorious for having bad capacitors. And doing my homework on the interweb, came across several descriptions of how to repair this microphone, and I'm going to attempt that repair and see if it works. Now, I've already started, and what you can see here on this board is basically from what the others on the internet are saying, is that there are certain capacitors that are prone to failure, and those capacitors are here, here, and this capacitor over here, which I've already replaced, and then another capacitor on the other side of this board on the back of the microphone is recommended to be replaced. So I'm also going to attempt that, although it's obvious, very delicate work, and we'll see if that is successful or not. I've got nothing to lose other than a few dollars to acquire these caps since the microphone's already broken, and my problem is that there's no audio coming out of the microphone at all. I believe, if I recall correctly, the outboard cap controls the audio, the inboard cap controls the DTMF, and, well, controls is probably not the right word, but they're in those two circuits, and as I said, that they are prone for failure. Now, the failure point supposedly is that both of these are 50-volt caps. Either they were the cheapest caps to acquire at the time or whatever, but there's very low voltage that flows through this circuit board. So over a period of time, those 50-volt caps are not getting enough voltage to stay, as they say, formed. And so eventually they stop passing the required voltages to the rest of the circuit. And that causes the microphone to stop working. So we're going to remove and replace these two caps. As I've already noted, there was a surface mount cap here that I've already replaced, and then I will attempt to replace this cap as well on the bottom, and then put the microphone back together and see if it actually works. So that's the intent. I mentioned that didn't go well, and one of the things that didn't go well was this connector here, which is another board that these two sandwich together. This connector here has to be desoldered from here, so it's hard wired or hard soldered in, so to speak, and here on this side of the board, as I was desoldering, this pad became basically unglued, if you will, or detached from the board and broke off. So I'm going to have to improvise some sort of fix for that when I put this thing all back together. So I didn't have a solder sucker, or I had a solder sucker, but it vanished. In fact, I have another video out there where I was repairing something on my Jeep where I discovered my solder sucker, walked away, and I have not found it since. I have to get another one eventually. So anyway, so these pads probably got overheated, and this one in particular separated and came off the board and basically tore off. So I'll have to do some sort of jumpering when I put this all back together to get this to work. So that's my intention here, to hopefully get this microphone working again, because I'd rather have the microphone that originally came with the radio working. I have the FT5100 that goes to this microphone, and as far as I know, is working fine, except that it doesn't have a functioning microphone, and I don't need that radio, so I was planning to sell it. There is a local swap meet coming up shortly, so I don't think I'll put this up on eBay if I'm successful, but we'll see. We'll see what happens. Anyway, so I'm going to get set up here. I'm going to get the soldering iron heated up to take these two surface mount items off. And this is my first attempt at working with surface mount components, so we'll see how that goes. But like I said, nothing ventured, nothing gained. Since the microphone's already dead, if I screw this up to the point where it doesn't work, what harm have I really done other than waste my time, perhaps? So I'll be back in a second for you, and maybe a minute or two or three or four from me. So stand by. Okay, I'm back. Obviously. Okay, I'm going to try and keep this in the view of the camera so I don't screw this up. But the first thing I'm going to do here is, with my soldering iron, I'm going to try and remove those two large square caps to prepare the board for the new caps. And as I've said before, these are surface mount, so I'm not going to try to do any desoldering here as much as I'm just going to work on, if I can, heating up these pads to do that. And same for over here. Like so. And then clean these pads up. Maybe I should clean the soldering iron up first. Get the goop off. Let's give these pads a little bit of solder here. Little dab will do ya. This is a bit awkward because there's a switch on the other side of this board, which makes it a little bit unstable to solder on. Okay, so we got those two capacitors off. Let's see if the camera will focus on a close-up here. Where are you? There you are. So those are the two capacitors, and one of them is a 0.1 UF capacitor, and the other is a 1.0, so it's important not to get those mixed up. And I have two such capacitors here that we're going to want to install. The 1 UF capacitor goes on the inboard side, and the 0.1 goes on the outboard. So inboard, outboard. So we're going to do the inboard side first, the 1 UF. I'm going to need to cut these leads down because obviously they are too long to fit. So where are my cutters? I guess I'm going to do that off camera. So I'll be back in a second. All right. I've done some finagling here to try and get this capacitor in the best position possible, and as you can see, or maybe you can't see because I've zoomed in as best I can, I'm holding the capacitor in place with a little piece of electrical tape. I try and keep the contacts as close to the board as possible so that I can solder, and so we'll see how this goes. I don't want to use too much solder and create a solder bridge, but at the same time, the part has to be secured. So let's see how I did. Magnifying glass, probably. Well, it's on there. It's not the prettiest job in the world. The other thing that I had to verify was the polarity, because these capacitors do have a polarity, and so basically what I did was I went online and just verified that the long lead is the positive side of the capacitor, and so hopefully that's true, because of course if the polarity is wrong, the microphone won't work, and I'm probably not going to make any attempts to troubleshoot if this is a failure. If the microphone doesn't work, then after I've done all this, then I probably just will abandon the effort. So now I want to do the inboard, and the inboard was a 1.0 UF capacitor, so that's these. And let's see if there's any markings. And indicate polarity. Yeah, I think that it's still positive is the longer lead, but since I'm about to cut the leads off, I'm going to mark the positive side with a Sharpie, just so that I don't lose my orientation once I cut these leads very short. We don't need much here, and in fact it's not a good idea for these leads to be long, because then that runs the risk of these capacitors coming in contact with something that they shouldn't and shorting out. Like so. I think we'll try the same method of holding this component down with some electrical tape. I've got the camera zoomed in quite a bit, so it's going to be very, very easy to drift out of the field, and my apologies for that if it does happen. That wasn't helpful. Yeah, let's put this thing on the tape first. Trying to maneuver this component so that it is positioned right where I want it. That's close. Let me just see if I'm still in the field of view before I try to solder. Close enough. A little bit out like that, I think. Well, I had to use my thumb there, and that was slightly uncomfortable, but it looks like it worked. Magnifying glass. Well, no solder bridges. Okay, so let us review. Replace that with a 0.1 UF capacitor. Is that microfarad? I think it's microfarad. And a 1.0 microfarad. Very easy to get those two confused, and obviously the two components look very similar. And then replace this capacitor a year and a half ago. And now we need to replace this capacitor on the microphone, because apparently that can cause a low audio condition, and for that it's, I think, a 0.0001 picofarad or something like that. Basically it's these suckers, and this is going to be interesting. Don't have a surface mount scope, obviously, and so these capacitors fortunately do not have a polarity, so I don't have to worry about plus versus minus. And we'll put the numbers, which are 102, up top. And the first challenge is going to be to get the old capacitor off. Not quite sure how the de-soldering is going to go here. This could get complicated, and I may have to do this. Excuse me. I may have to do this off camera, just for the clumsiness of it, but I'm going to try. And do this by hand. So I've successfully desoldered the mic, wire. I think I just got the capacitor, and I want to do one side at a time here so that the wires don't get mixed up. Nope, that was not successful. That was successful. So as I said, I want to try and do this one side at a time so that I don't get these wires confused and whatnot. So I'm just going to bend away the half desoldered capacitor. How am I going to figure this? Maybe this bottle cap will help. Shorten these leads. Nah. Well, I need to figure out how to keep these components stable so that I can solder both the wire and the capacitor. I think I need my well, you're probably only going to see my big fat head here, because I definitely need close in. And this is a situation where I need a third arm, or hand, more specifically. How am I going to deal with that? Sometimes spring-loaded pliers are not helpful. Well, I don't think that this moving the component aside is going to work, so let's try something else, which is I think that we're dealing with a red and a blue wire here, but whatever that color is that's not blue, it's going to be my black side. So I'm going to mark the side where the blue wire go. I'm sorry, not the blue wire, the opposite of the blue wire goes, because I have to get this cap out of the way. So okay. Look at that pad, make sure it's okay. Looks all right. Will this work? Probably not. Nope, everything's too jiggly. God damn it. I definitely need to have this microphone up. So let's tape this little bottle cap to the board. No solder bridges. The wires are reconnected. Doesn't look like a cold solder joint. Let's see if we can do a close-up here on this. Where are you, camera? You see that? What a pain in the ass. Sir, any more focused? The winning move for me was to mount the capacitor first and then lay the wires on top of it. The wire insulation at the microphone is now pretty badly mangled, and so I don't want the wires shorting out against the case of the microphone, so I think I will go and get some liquid tape, liquid electrical tape, to put on the case and around the wires where the wires come over the case before I reassemble this. But although the parts now are that others have recommended replacing to fix this microphone are now. Okay, I'm back. Had to go to the Lowe's, actually, not a sponsor as they say, to get some liquid tape to cover over the leads leading to the microphone here, because they were pretty mangled up in this surgery exercise. And so that's looking good, and I've already sandwiched the two boards together. That was very fiddly, and there's just no way for me to video that. I still have a problem with the foil down in here. Hopefully when the solder starts flowing, that will not be a major issue. I'll have to check continuity with that pin that's involved in that foil issue. But we're ready to resolder the two halves of this sandwich back together. Little ham, little mayonnaise, and call it a day. Get it? Ham. Ah. Anyway, so we have to solder these points over here, and we have to solder, I always say we, I don't know why. I have to solder these points over here, and then reassemble the microphone. And I realize that I'm missing a piece of the microphone. I'm not sure where it is. Hopefully I can find it. But if not, then that's just tough luck on me. Anyway, then after we get this thing all back together, then I can test it to see if this repair has actually worked. One of the things that others have said, and hopefully I'm still in the camera field of view. Let me flip this around to see. Yeah, I'm still in there. Is that some mic level adjustments may need to happen, and this pot is where that adjustment comes in, and this is the back of the microphone, and there's no hole for that pot, which is quite annoying, I must say. But we'll cross that bridge when we get to it. I probably should not put the mic back together and just plug it in and test it first. Well, maybe I'll do that, but certainly I have to resolder these points. So that's what I'm going to do now, is solder up. Solder up this sandwich thing. Just make sure that this looks right, and it does. That's certainly right. And so let's do it to it. Okay. Let me inspect this thing. That side looks good. Get a flashlight. Yeah, I definitely don't like the way that broken foil piece looks. That's going to require a little bit more fiddly work. So I'm going to stop the camera here and take care of that. Let me see if I can show you exactly what I'm talking about. Where are you? I don't think there's enough light. There is a bad foil that I had mentioned at the opening of this video in the desoldering point. At the desoldering step, one of these pins in this area got damaged. And I believe it's this third pin in, where the foil is not on the board, it's sticking up a bit. I'm not sure if it's making a good electrical connection, and because it's inside the sandwich, it's going to be really tough to get at. Actually, I'm wrong. Come on. The reason it's going to be tough to get at is because it's behind these pins. It's the third one in over here, where I'm pointing with my little file. So it's not something I'm going to be able to record. It's unfortunate, but it is what it is. And so I've got to do something about that. And as I said, I'm going to stop the camera at this point. I'm going to deal with that, and then I'll be back. See ya. Once again, I'm back. And so I did work on, come on, focus. You can do it. I know you can. There you go. What I had to do was I had to snip off several of the leads on that connector below to get a soldering iron in behind there in order to fix that pin foil issue. I think that I got it. Time will tell, but it certainly is an improvement over the way that it looked before. It's just a big blob of solder. So anyway, I think I'm going to take my own advice, and before I reconnect or put the shell on this, I'm going to see if I can't find myself an antenna and configure the radio so that I can test this microphone before reassembly. So let's do that. It may be a while because the gear is scattered to the four winds, but we will reconvene when I've got everything together. Thanks. See ya. Once again, I have returned. Okay, so I got out my Astron 12-volt power supply. I've hooked this radio up to it. I've also connected the rig to a handheld beam. It's an arrow beam for satellite work. It's the only thing I had handy. So let's plug in this microphone and see if we have success or not. I've set up my crummy Baofeng radio on the other side of the room, and I set it to 146.58. So let's go there. And oops, sorry, did I knock you guys out of alignment here? Yes, I did. And low power is set, no tone, no repeat. This should be good. And so let's see what the jury has to say. Sorry. Let's see what the jury has to say. Oh, that's promising. Check 1 2 check. Check 1 2 check. Check 1 2 check 1 2. I hear audio. That's actually freaking fantastic because honestly I didn't expect this to work. Now I have to find those missing pieces, if I can, to the shell of this microphone. Gee, I hope they haven't gone missing because one of the pieces is the push to talk button. So I'm going to have to look high and low for that to see if, where am I here? I've lost the picture. There we are. To see if I can reassemble this thing fully and completely, because there's a button that goes off the side of the shell that pushes in here, which is where the push to talk switch is. And let's do this one more time. Check 1 2 check. Check 1 2. Check 1 2 check 1 2. Sounds okay. At first blush anyway. So where are we here? There we are. So I know that the microphone is working after a fashion. So you hear a little bit of scratchiness in there. I'm not sure what that is, but I'll worry about that after or if I can find those other missing little bits to the shell and reconnect everything. And so the microphone is back fully together, and then see what it sounds like. It could also be the crappy Beofunk because I've got the volume turned up to maximum, so it could be distorting because the volume is at max. So, but I'm tickled pink that this thing actually works. The repair worked after a fashion, and at the very least it proves that this radio can still transmit, can still put out power, which means that even if this microphone doesn't work and I have to spend $30 to get an aftermarket, and the aftermarket microphone will not have the DTMF, not that it really matters much anymore, because nobody uses DTMF except maybe for control operators for older repeaters where you can control the repeater through DTMF codes. Other than that, nobody's going to miss them. But it would be great if I had the original microphone to sell along with the rest of the radio. So we'll see. I'm going to go in search of the little bits for this microphone and see if I can't put it all back together. So maybe after it's all back together, if I can find those other pieces, then I'll do the closing bit on this radio. So we'll see. I will meet up with you one more time before this video is done. Thanks. Bye. One last time for a wrap up. Okay. Mic's all back together. Where are you here? There we are. I found the side bits, one for the light and the other side bit, more important, for the mic. And so now let's try it out. Where am I? Power. And hello, where are you? Check 1 2 check. Check 1 2. I don't know if you may not be able to hear it. Turn the volume down for the distortion factor, but the audio is still working. So, and I don't know if you can see that, but where are you? Come back. The lights are on and somebody's home. Haven't tested, well, if I press a button, I don't hear anything on DTMF, but I don't remember how to use this radio, and I may have to set something. But as I said before, even if the DTMF doesn't work, who cares? Because so few people, if any, even use DTMF anymore. But it's still neat to have the original microphone that went with this radio. And as long as I've got audio, check 1 2 check, then everything's good. So I think we're gonna kind of leave it here. So that was kind of an interesting adventure in repairing the MH-27 microphone, which has a terrible reputation, and it appears to be very well deserved. Oops, sorry, I bumped the camera. So this has been a long time in coming. As I said at the opening of this video, I started this repair more than a year and a half ago when just before I moved. And it was incomplete because I ran into that problem with the foil separating on the board, and I was kind of bummed out about that. And then life took over and relocated here, and I'm absolutely shocked that all of the parts made it over through the move intact since other things have disappeared. And this radio is ready for its next user. So we'll see how that goes, but yeah, I'm tickled pink that I was able to fix this following the instructions I found on the internet for this particular radio, and so that's about it. So thanks for watching. I hope that you at least found this a little bit on the interesting side. And if you have one of these old mics and we're looking to repair it, that it might help you in the end in terms of how, as the Brits like to say, how fiddly the repair is and how difficult it is to repair that tiny board with those surface mount parts, especially when you don't have the surface mount kind of equipment. So you saw how I improvised to overcome that issue, and it wasn't pretty, but it works, and that's the bottom line. So thanks for watching, and on to the next video. Take care. Bye.